Hello, this is Ralph Edwards, ready to walk in on the people-to-people sports banquet being held right now at the world-famous Hotel Astor on Times Square in New York City. Remember what happened here last year? Finally did it at the people-to-people sports banquet here at the Astor in New York.
Well, Ralph, I think this is a sinister conspiracy.
So you know why our This Is Your Life fingers are crossed tonight as I go out to pick one out of this distinguished gathering. Jack Dempsey is there, Florence Chadwick, Don Budge. There's Florence Chadwick. And Don Budge, great tennis player. And Joe Louis is there. Althea Gibson. Kyle Rote, famous footballer. Robert Moses is there, be the new president of the New York World's Fair. Oh, there are other greats present here tonight, and our cameras will prove that to you in just a moment. Our job is to pick just one. Well, let's get on with it and do it. Here we go. This is your life. So this is your life himself, Ralph Edwards. Hey. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Bob Warren. Hello, everyone. I know that most of you, many of you knew that we're going to do This Is Your Life here from the people-to-people sports banquet tonight. But we didn't say just who it was, and I don't think more than one or two here know who it's going to be. Now, there are so many deserving people here. How can you pick just one? Well, we thought we would do this. We thought that we would just pick the champion among champions. And so, it will be you. Joe Louis, tonight, this is your life. Oh, hello, Joe.
How are you?
Now, look, did we really surprise you?
You really did.
Joe, in our time, there have been many great heavyweight champions, but two, perhaps more than any others, captured the imagination of the American public. Now, you were certainly one of those. Here's the other, Jack Dempsey, right here.
Congratulations, Joe.
Oh,
It couldn't happen to a smaller fellow.
oh, thanks, Jack.
Now, you, of course, never fought Joe, Jack.
No, I was lucky because Joe came along after my time. But we could have made a great battle, though. But, Joe, tonight is your life, and congratulations. It's going to be wonderful because I know Ralph surprised me about 1957, and what a night it was. Purple, Carpenter, Fred Fulton, and all the others. But let me warn you about this fellow. Keep your guard up at all times because you never know what's going to happen. Incidentally, Ralph, who you got back in the big black book out there?
Now, I'm going to duck that you just threw at me there. If you'll come with me, though, Joe, to our stage, we'll soon find out. And Jack Dempsey, thank you. One of the greats here. Jack Dempsey, whose life we have done. All right, oh, and Joe, I wanted to say this, too. A very special bow to Colonel Eddie Egan. And look who's by him, Don Amici, the whole gang, for all of this, really, and his co-sponsor, Sports Illustrated magazine, through its special events and public relations director, Keith Morris. Thank you, Keith, very much for letting us join in this crusade to further world peace and understanding by sending our athletes all over the world to compete. A cause is the sport of all of us, doesn't it, Joe?
I so do, and I want to thank the Colonel, too, for inviting me.
Well, good boy. Come along, Joe Louis. In the meantime, here's our good friend Bob Warren. Bob?
Now, here coming to you tonight from New York is Ralph Edwards and his guest, the former heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis.
Here's the man. Bob Warren. Here we go. All right, thank you, Bob. Sit down here, Joe, in our ring, as you have so many times in your career, waiting for the bell to send you shuffling out, stalking your prey. Wow. In the 17 years, I thought you may get up. I was going to run, but you...
I can't get up no more now.
You can't get up no more. Well, you're going to have to get up a lot before the night's over, I think, and because we've got some really surprises that are going to rock you up on your feet. In the 17 years between 1934 and 1951, you fought 71 times as a professional, winning all but 3 fights, 54 by knockouts. You held the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship longer than any other fighter, 11 years, 8 months, 7 days. A record for all to shoot at for years to come, Joe. Now, to get all the answers, in your case, Joe, find out what makes a champ, let's go back to 1914, May 13th, your birthday. Where were you born, Joe?
In Lafayette, Alabama.
On a farm near Lafayette. 120 acres of poor land rented by your father and mother, Monroe and Lily Barrow. How many of you children were there, Joe?
8.
Of whom you were the 7th. Your sister Susie died some years ago, and your brother Lonnie passed on just last June. But here from Detroit, Chicago, and Los Angeles are the others. Emerald, Alvanius, De Leon, Eulalia, Eunice, and your stepbrother Pat. Crowd in there around him. Kick the stool back and get right in close to him there. That's the old fire. Now, doesn't really remember his father, does he, Emerald?
No. Dad worked very hard when Joe was a baby. But Dad came very ill and was sick and was hospitalized, and Joe never saw him again.
Yes, he died, actually, before Joe
Yes, he died.
remembers him, I guess. For a while, your mother tried to work the farm herself, didn't she, Alvanius?
Yes, that's right. We all kids pitched in and tried to help all we could, but it was quite too much, too hard to make a living.
Then, in 1922, when you're 8, Joe, your mother marries Patrick Brooks, a widower and a family friend, and that's where you come into Joe's life, Pat.
That's right, Ralph. That's when we all moved into Camp Hill, Alabama, and Joe started school there.
Well, what kind of a school was it there in Camp Hill, Joe?
Well, it was a little one-frame school there, one-room building, and in fact, I was there about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still standing there.
Well, was there anything about Joe as a boy that showed he would someday be a great champion in the ring, De Leon?
I think so. He could run faster than most boys. He was bigger than himself, but Joe was mostly quiet and stayed to himself.
Yes. Well, now, is that right, Eulalia?
Oh, yes, Ralph. I used to lick it myself, never dreaming
I think you still can.
never dreaming he had that much power, though, Ralph, or I never touched it.
No, I'll bet not. As a boy, did Joe get into scraps with the other boys at school, Eunice?
Never. Joe really didn't like fighting. He was good to everyone. Later, when he became champ, he helped all of us. He sent me through Howard University and the University of Michigan so that I could become a teacher. He also helped to send 5 nieces and nephews through college. And once when Eulalia was very ill for a long time, he saw that she had the very best medical care possible. He bought us cars and homes and set his brothers up in business. But most of all, Ralph, he looked after Mother and Dad and saw that they had the best of everything during the rest of their lives.
But back here in 1925 in Camp Hill, Alabama, Joe, your stepfather decides the opportunities for making a better living for his family are greater in the booming northern city of Detroit. And he gets a job there as a carpenter for the city, and a year later sends for all of you. Now, you, Joe, are 12 years old. Where did you go to school there in Detroit? Do you remember, Joe?
First school at Duffield.
Yes. And then you went to a trade school there?
Yeah, the Brownstone's Trade School.
To prepare yourself for a job
That's right.
at one of the automobile plants. But your mother had legal ambitions for you, didn't she?
She showed that, but she wanted me to become a violin player.
and Joe did study the violin for a while, didn't he, Eulalia?
Yes, Joe studied the violin for a while. And Mama used to give him $1 a week to take these lessons until one day the teacher showed up and Joe hadn't been to class at all. She wondered what had happened to him.
Yes.
And that's when Mother found that instead of going to the violin lessons, Joe had been using the $1 to pay for boxing lessons at Brewster Center.
Your stepfather was opposed to your nightly workouts at Brewster Center, wasn't he?
Well, he wanted me to get more rest and also so I'd be able to learn more in school.
Well, he thought Joe would never amount to very much if he kept hanging around.
Well, how did your mother feel about it, Eunice?
Well, when Joe told Mother that what he wanted most was to be a fighter, she was quite upset. But later, when she found that he really had his heart set on it, she said, "Very well, if you want to be a fighter, then be a good one, and I will help you all that I can."
At 16, you quit school and work at odd jobs around Detroit. Each night finds you coming down the steps of the family home and turning down Madison Street toward Brewster Center in your nightly workouts in the ring. One such night, a 10-year-old neighborhood youngster falls in beside you. Joe, he says, how about going to the gym with you? And you say, okay. And a half block later, the boy says, Joe, how about letting me carry your bag for you? And again you say, okay. Now, as time goes by, this comes to be an almost nightly ritual. And here's the kid who lived down the block from you in Detroit. In the early 30s, former welterweight and middleweight boxing champion of the world, Sugar Ray. You can take it. Go ahead. You can take it.
Ralph, suppose every boy has an idol, and honestly, I'm so proud to say that Joe is my idol, and still is. It seems as though it was only yesterday, man, and we were back in Detroit down at Brewster Center, and I was watching you go through the paces there. Boy, was I fascinated. He could always punch, Ralph.
Yeah, I heard that.
Then my parents moved to New York, and I lost contact with Joe. I didn't hear from him again until, I think it was 1935 when you came to fight Conera. And I started up to the training camp at Pompton Lakes, watching this guy again, banging the bags around, and his sparring partner. Gee, I'm telling you, I wanted to be so like this guy. Gee, but everything I learned about boxing, all of the good clean habits and training hard and clean living, I honestly learned from Joe. And I say, there's another thing. You know, if it hadn't been for you, I just might not have been a fighter.
Prize fighting.
You're the greatest.
Prize fighting would have lost a great champion, Ray, if you hadn't have been a fighter, believe me. He deserves a hand. Let's give him a big one, this guy. I know Joe's mighty happy to see you here tonight, Sugar Ray Robinson, and we'll be seeing you in Los Angeles on December 3rd in your fight with Gene Fulmer. And our thanks again, too, to you and to sisters and brothers here, Emerald, Alvanius, DeLeon, Eulalia, Eunice, and Pat. Thank you very much. Now, in a moment, Joe Louis, we'll trace your ring career from your first amateur fights to the world crowned and beyond. Lots more surprises for you and for all our viewers. But first, here again is our good friend Bob Warren.
Here again are This is your live host, Ralph Edwards, and former heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis. The year, 1932, the place, the Detroit Athletic Club.
Now, this is your first amateur fight, Joe, as the middleweight representative on the Brewster Center team. Your opponent is Johnny Myler. Now, how did you make out that night, Joe?
Not so good.
You got knocked down 7 times.
That's right.
In 2 rounds, I think. Not yet the Joe Louis the world is to idolize someday, but your instructor at Brewster, Atler Ellis, is far from discouraged. You more than justify his faith by winning your next 13 bouts by knockouts.
That's right.
I saw a lot of Joe in his amateur fights in Detroit, and I was greatly impressed by his potential hitting power.
The man who has become your co-manager and lifetime friend and who helped pilot your career to world fame. From Detroit, here's John Roxborough. Here he is. Mr. Roxborough, how did Joe do as an amateur while you were watching him develop?
He did all right, Ralph. He's proved to everybody and to myself that he had that hitting power. And 58 of his amateur fights, he won 54 of them, and 43 were knockouts. He had a dynamite left jab, a wonderful, fast, clever left hook that was a real knockout punch. And this right hand, when that connected, it was the absolute, the kiss of death.
I was wondering when you were going to get to that. When did Joe decide to turn pro, John?
Well, after he was in the inner-city Golden Glove matches in Chicago in 1933, he came to me then, and as a 19-year-old kid, and said, I want to turn pro. I said, okay, Joe, I'll get you a good manager and a trainer. He said, no, just get me a good trainer. You be my manager. And I insisted that he gets his brother's permission. Then we called up Julian Black.
And here he is, Joe, your good friend and co-manager with John Roxborough, Julian Black of Chicago. Well, come on down here, fellas, and tell us now, what was the next step, Julian?
Well, Ralph, our first big problem was to get the best trainer available. We could find, so we were fortunate to get the late Jack Blackburn. And I think that Jack did more for Joe in his entire career and winning the heavyweight title than anyone else in the world.
You agree with that, Joe?
I agree with that.
He was kind of like a father to you.
He was.
In the fighting years ahead, you and Jack Blackburn, as well as John and Julian here, have your sights set on only one goal, the heavyweight championship of the world. Thank you, John Roxborough and Julian Black. Thank you. Joe, you and all the gang here will get the chance to talk over old times at the party in your honor at the Astor Hotel here, which provided accommodations for our guests and our This Your Life staff members. Well, it took 3 years and 35 fights for you to get a crack at the world title, Joe. You battered your way past such ring stalwarts as Primo Carnera, King Levinsky, Max Baer, Jack Sharkey, winning all but one of those 35 fights, 29 by knockouts. And the only one you lost?
I won that one on June 19, 1936, at Yankee Stadium in New York.
Yes, he's here, Joe, himself, a former world heavyweight champion from Hamburg, Germany, the Black Ulan of the Rhine, Max Bailey. Well, now, Max Schmeling, at the age of 31, you accomplished the impossible. You stopped the 22-year-old Joe Louis's reign of terror. How'd you do it?
Well, I hope you don't want me to repeat the whole fight story.
No.
Well, I hit Joe in the 4th round with a right to his head. And that was his 7th round. But up to then, it didn't look so very good for me. Joe had a very good left hand, and I couldn't get away from it. But then in the 4th round, my big chance came. You remember, Joe, I told you, I have seen a half year ago before we fought, I have seen him fighting Paulino, and he made some mistake. He's dropping his hand, his left. Well, I had the chance. When I crossed him, when I hit him right on the chin, no, not on the chin, a little bit higher, and down Joe went. I stopped, I started in my corner. I thought maybe the fight is over, but all of a sudden, Joe got up after a count of 2, very early.
Yes, and for 8 more rounds.
I was very surprised.
But for 8 more rounds, Joe, you stood up to a beating seldom seen in ring history, proving once and for all that you could take it as well as dish it out.
Well, he dished it out tonight, too.
Well, now, what about this fella, Mike?
Well, Joe Louis is a great friend, and he's the biggest sportsman and the finest sportsman I ever met. Joe, all good luck to you and to your family.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you.
It was the first time in your professional ring career, Joe, that you were ever counted out. You, Max Schmeling, staged one of the greatest upset victories in ring history. And 2 years later, though, you got your revenge, didn't you, Joe?
I was lucky the 2 years later.
You knocked Max out in the first round on June 22nd, 1938, again at Yankee Stadium. We want to thank you, Max Schmeling, a great champion, for coming all the way from Germany to be with Joe tonight.
Well, I'm very glad I came over from Germany. It took the long way. And wishing Joe the best of luck. And after we've seen each other so many years, we didn't see this enough.
That's right.
But sometimes the English language is a very hard language, sir.
You're doing all right.
Joe, good luck to you.
Thank you, Mike.
And God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Max Schmeling. Thank you. Max interrupted a vacation. We finally found him in Switzerland to get him here. This stunning defeat delays your championship quest for a year until the bright lights of Comiskey Park in Chicago spotlight you, Joe, and...
Jim Braddock. This was the night of June the 22nd, 1937.
Another world heavyweight champion, another friend, James J. Braddock. Jim?
All right, Jim.
As the then champion, Jim, and thinking of Joe's terrific record, were you at all worried about meeting Joe in the ring?
Well, Ralph, no. After having him down the first round, I figured that was my night. I was going to take Joe, but he got up off the floor, and he come right at me. And the fight was pretty even up until the 8th round, and all of a sudden he hit me with a short right hand. You better ask him about the rest.
Well, what happened after that is history, Jim. You were out for better than 2 minutes from that short rocket-like blow, and Joe Louis was the new heavyweight champion, but he won from a great champion, Jim Braddock. It's wonderful to have you with us here tonight. Jim, thank you very much. Thank you. Champion at 23, Joe Louis, you're willing and always eager to meet all comers. With your country at war in 1942, you fight Buddy Baer on January 9th, and you turn over your whole purse to Navy relief. 3 days later, you become Private Joseph Louis Barrow, and on March 27th, you fight Abe Simon, this time turning your purse over to Army relief.
For this fight, you buy 3,000 tickets so that your buddies at Camp Dix can see the fight free. Now, what your presence in the Army and your many exhibition fights did for the war, time, morale can never be measured, Joe. On September 23rd, 1945, you're awarded the Legion of Merit. And 2 weeks later, now Staff Sergeant Joe Louis Barrow, you're honorably discharged from the Army.
On March the 1st, 1949, Joe Louis, undefeated as champion, retired. After an elimination bout, I was declared his successor.
One more heavyweight champion of the world, your good friend Joe, Ezzard Charles. His retirement, Ezzard, Joe suddenly learned that he owed the government a good deal of money in back income taxes, and to meet some of this indebtedness, he decides to return to the ring. So he challenges you, the champion, Ezzard Charles.
Yeah. Well, we fought in New York on September 27, 1950. It was one of the saddest days in my life. Well, it was. You see, Joe, you had been my inspiration since I was a kid. I knew how badly you needed to win, but I was the champion now, and I had to defend my title. And I had to do my best to keep it. With anybody else in the ring, it would have been a great night for me, but with Joe Louis, well, I want to cry when the announcer came at the end of the 15th round that I had won the decision.
Your comeback fails, Joe, but every penny of your purse goes toward paying off your taxes. Thank you, Ezzard Charles, a great champ, too. Good luck in your new career as a wrestler with Al Haas Promotions there, Ezzard. He's a wrestler now, you know, doing well. Thank you very much, Ezzard. Age, the stalking enemy of all great athletes, Joe, brings your ring career to its irrevocable end a year later in the 8th round of your fight with Rocky Marciano when a looping right sends you through the ropes. This is the last punch you ever took. This was the night of October 26, 1951. But a champ is never really through, and neither is our story, and we'll come back to it in a moment. Meanwhile, here again is Bob Warren. And the good wishes of Manny Seaman, too, your trainer, whom you love very, very much. The emptiness of heart that every champion must feel when his career comes to an end, in your case, Joe, is more than filled by your wife, Martha, a successful attorney in Los Angeles. Here's Martha, and by your two children of an earlier marriage, Jacqueline and Joe Louis Jr. of Chicago. Here's Jackie and Joe Louis Jr. This, what do we call you? Punchy. And by your two foster children, Candace and Amber. This is Candace, here is Amber.
Joe, we all love you, and you're still a champ.
Enough love here to fill any heart, even one as great as yours, Joe Louis. Now, we know that Martha will cherish the school charm bracelet telling the story of your life, designed especially for her by Marshall Jewelers of New York, who provide it. Now, we'll see that you get a film of tonight's program, Joe, and this Bell & Howell 16-millimeter sound projector to show it on, a 16-millimeter electric eye movie camera, both furnished by Bell & Howell. Now, today, you're busy refereeing fights and making public appearances and managing the Joe Louis Milk Company of Chicago and are associated with the Mammoth Life and Accident Insurance Company. In this way, you're paying off your tax indebtedness. Your spare time is spent watching television with a huge bowl of ice cream before you. So, now, kind of help out. RCA is replacing your old television set with this RCA Victor Wagner color set. Now you'll see all the NBC specials living color, developed by RCA, and this ice cream, a gallon a day from Carnation. There you are, furnished by them. That'll work that out all right. Now, we would like to commemorate your greatness in the ring with this portrait of you done by one of America's leading artists, David Immerman. It'll hang prominently with pride in Madison Square Garden, the scene of your triumphs. There you are. This is your life, Joe Louis. There is no greater tribute than that you have lived your life in honor, with respect for your fellow man, and for God, with great courage and a great heart. Good night. God bless you, Joe. You're a legend, boy.